The night was colder than it should have been for October in Boston. That's what Robert Mitchell thought as he waited outside the 24-hour pharmacy, thumb hovering over his phone as he debated calling home again. Inside the plastic bag dangling from his wrist fever reducer for his 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The truck's engine still rumbled in the empty parking lot, headlights cutting through the fog that had settled over the city like a shroud. 40 minutes away from home, when Emma's fever had spiked to 102. 40 minutes with only Mrs. Martha Fletcher next door to watch her. Martha was 73 and meant well, but Robert's stomach knotted at the thought of Emma waking disoriented, calling for a father who wasn't there, calling sometimes for a mother 3 years gone. That's when he saw her. Not in the pharmacy parking lot, but across the street at the bus stop. A woman in a wheelchair, blonde hair falling forward as she hunched against the cold. She wasn't even sitting on the bench, but on the concrete beside it as if she'd slid down in exhaustion. No one else around. No buses running at this hour. Robert checked his watch, 11:47 p.m. The transit system had shut down nearly 2 hours ago. He should go. Emma needed him. But his feet carried him across the street before his mind could catch up. Work boots, heavy on the pavement. "Are you all right?" The words felt inadequate as they left his mouth, fog curling around them in the amber glow of the street lamp. The woman looked up slowly and Robert caught his breath. She couldn't have been older than 30, but her eyes held something ancient. Exhaustion, yes, but something deeper. A weariness that spoke of battles fought long after the strength to fight had faded. "I'm fine, just waiting." Robert glanced at his watch again, an unnecessary gesture. They both knew no bus was coming. It's almost midnight. The buses stopped running at 10. "I know." Her attempt to shift positions ended in a grimace of pain. "I just don't have anywhere else to go right now." "How long have you been out here?" "Since yesterday." The words hung between them as the temperature continued to drop. Robert's hand tightened around the pharmacy bag, the crinkle of plastic unnaturally loud in the stillness. "Since yesterday. In a wheelchair. In October." The woman had been here for over 24 hours. Robert's phone buzzed in his pocket. Martha calling about Emma, no doubt. He should answer, should get in his truck and drive home to his daughter who needed him. Any reasonable person would. Instead, "What's your name?" "Alexandra." "Alexandra Cooper." The woman's voice had an unexpected strength to it despite her circumstances. A hint of someone used to being heard. Robert Mitchell. He shifted his weight, a nervous habit. "I should..." He stopped as the movement knocked his wallet from his jacket pocket. It fell open as it hit the ground, a photograph slipping out. Before he could reach for it, Alexandra had somehow grabbed it, her movement surprisingly quick. She stared at the photo, Robert and Emma at last year's father-daughter dance, both wearing cheesy matching sashes over their formal clothes, Emma missing her front teeth in a wide grin. "Your daughter," Alexandra asked, something softening in her expression. "Emma, she's 7. Robert found himself smiling despite the situation. "Thinks she knows everything about everything already. It's stubborn kid you'll ever meet, but smart as a whip." He hesitated, then added, "Lost her mom 3 years ago. Cancer. It's just us now." The admission surprised him. He rarely spoke of Catherine to strangers, rarely spoke of her at all, except when Emma asked questions he couldn't dodge. But something about this moment, this woman alone in the dark, made the truth slip out. "She's beautiful. She has your smile." Alexandra handed the photo back carefully. Robert noticed a plastic hospital bracelet on her wrist as she extended her arm. Memorial Hospital. The same hospital where Catherine had worked as a nurse. The same hospital where she had died. His gaze lingered on the bracelet too long. Alexandra pulled her sleeve down to cover it. "Just got released this morning. Nowhere to go after that. Memorial, my wife worked there, oncology department." Alexandra's eyes widened slightly. "Was her name Catherine?" "Catherine Mitchell." Robert felt his heart stutter. "Yes, how did I remember her?" Alexandra's voice softened. "She was my nurse for a few days after my accident 2 years ago. Kind eyes. Showed me pictures of her daughter. Always talked about how brilliant she was." The coincidence knocked the air from Robert's lungs. Of all the people to find at a bus stop in the middle of the night, someone who had known Catherine, someone his wife had cared for. His phone buzzed again. Martha persistent. Emma needed him. Robert Mitchell had always been cautious. The guy who checked the locks twice, who kept 6 months of emergency savings, who never took chances. But standing there in the cold, he heard Catherine's voice in his head as clearly as if she stood beside him. Sometimes the right thing and the reasonable thing aren't the same, Bobby. Come with me. The words left his mouth before he could reconsider. What Alexandra's brow furrowed. Come with me, Robert repeated firmer this time. It's supposed to drop below freezing tonight. There's a storm front coming through. You can't stay here. I don't need charity. Alexandra's spine straightened, pride surfacing through exhaustion. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a warm place for the night. My daughter's sick. I need to get home with her medicine, and I can't. I can't leave knowing you're spending another night on concrete. I just can't. You don't even know me. I could be dangerous. You're not, Robert said simply. Dangerous people don't worry about being dangerous. Alexandra studied him for a long moment, searching his face. Maybe looking for sincerity, maybe for threat, maybe just trying to understand why a stranger would stop on a cold night for someone society had clearly forgotten. Why she finally asked the question hanging between them. Why do you care? Robert considered lying, considered giving some easy answer about civic duty or human kindness. But looking at this woman who'd been invisible to everyone else for 2 days, he told the truth. Because 3 years ago, right after my wife died, I stood in a parking lot just like this one, holding Emma completely lost. I didn't know how I was going to make it through the night, much less raise a daughter alone. An old man stopped, saw me crying, and said 5 words that saved me. You don't have to be alone. He stayed with me for an hour, just talking, until I could breathe again. I never got his name. Robert extended his hand. So I'm asking you, let me be that person for you tonight. Just tonight. Tomorrow you can go back to managing on your own if that's what you want. But tonight, come with me. The October wind picked up, rattling the empty bus stop sign. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The pharmacy's neon sign flickered. And in that moment, Alexandra Cooper made a decision that would change everything. She took his hand. Getting Alexandra into the truck proved more complicated than Robert anticipated. She insisted on doing as much herself as possible, transferring from the wheelchair to the passenger seat with practiced movements, despite her obvious exhaustion. The wheelchair itself was heavier than Robert expected. He folded it with Alexandra's instruction and secured it in the truck bed with bungee cords he kept for hauling supplies home from the hardware store. After double-checking that it was secure against the bumpy road ahead, he climbed into the driver's seat and finally answered Martha's call. Yes, I got the medicine. No, I'm fine. Just got delayed. Robert's eyes flicked to Alexandra as he spoke. Be home in about 20 minutes. How's Emma? He listened, relief washing over him as Martha confirmed the fever hadn't risen further. Still, 20 minutes felt like an eternity when your child was sick. Robert pulled onto the main road, suddenly aware of how strange this situation would look to an outsider. A mechanic with grease still under his fingernails despite his best efforts to scrub it away. A woman who, despite her current circumstances, carried herself with the bearing of someone used to boardrooms and executive decisions. The unlikeliest of pairs heading toward his modest home in the suburbs. Tell me about Emma, Alexandra said suddenly, breaking the awkward silence. What's wrong with her fever and cough? Started yesterday morning, got worse tonight. Robert's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. She's tough, though, tougher than me most days. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She tried to convince me she was fine because she didn't want to miss school tomorrow. They're doing volcano projects in science class. It's all she's talked about for weeks, volcanoes. Alexandra's expression softened. I loved those projects as a kid. Made one with my father once. Baking soda and vinegar, the whole works. We added red food coloring and dish soap. The kitchen was a disaster. It was the first personal thing she'd shared, and Robert cataloged it automatically. Raised with a father involved in her life. Memories of normal childhood projects. Emma's is supposed to erupt tomorrow. Robert continued. She's been working on it for weeks. Papier-mâché painted to look like Mount St. Helens. She even researched the actual eruption patterns. He glanced at Alexandra. She gets the perfectionism from her mother. And what does she get from you, the stubborn streak and the inability to leave well enough alone? Robert said, and was rewarded with something that might have been a laugh. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The heater finally kicked in properly, and Robert saw Alexandra's shoulders slowly relax as warmth filled the cab. Can I ask? Robert started, then stopped. Sorry, you don't have to answer anything. You want to know about the wheelchair, Alexandra said. It wasn't a question. I want to know if you're okay, Robert corrected gently. The wheelchair is just part of it. Alexandra was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then staring out at the passing streetlights, she began to speak. 2 years ago, car accident. I was CEO of Cooper Technologies, a software startup I built from nothing. We just secured our Series B funding $20 million to scale our cybersecurity platform. She paused and Robert felt the weight of unspoken words. I was driving back from the celebration. Rain, a truck that didn't stop, and then nothing. Woke up in Memorial with your wife as my nurse. T12 spinal cord injury, paralysis from the waist down. Her words were clinical, detached, as if she were reading someone else's medical chart. While I was in recovery, my business partner orchestrated a hostile takeover, claimed I was mentally unfit to lead after the trauma. The board sided with him. I fought it in court, but he had better lawyers. Medical bills piled up. Insurance company found a loophole to deny full coverage. Lost everything. My company, my condo, eventually, even my adapted car. That's not right. The words felt pathetically inadequate even as Robert said them. A lot of things aren't right, Alexandra said quietly. But you learn to adapt or you don't survive. Robert turned into his neighborhood. Modest houses with small yards, porch lights creating pools of yellow in the darkness. Mrs. Fletcher's house still had the living room light on a beacon guiding him home. That's my neighbor, Robert explained, seeing Alexandra tense. Martha Fletcher. She watches Emma when I have to go out. She'll probably come over tomorrow to check on us. Fair warning, she'll try to feed you. Resistance is futile. Are you sure about this? Alexandra asked as they pulled into his driveway. I'm sure, Robert said firmly. The house was nothing special, a 3-bedroom ranch that needed new gutters and had a front step that creaked. But it was warm and it was safe, and right now that was everything. Let me check on Emma first, Robert said as he unlocked the door. Make yourself comfortable. Kitchen's through there if you're hungry. Bathroom's down the hall. He paused, suddenly uncertain. Is it accessible? Can you? I'll manage, Alexandra assured him. I've gotten good at managing. Go check on your daughter. Martha met him in the hallway, her silver hair escaping its usual tight bun. Relief washed over her lined face when she saw him. About time. I was about to call the police. Her worry manifested as irritation, a trait Robert had grown used to. Sorry, Martha. Got delayed. How is she? Fever's down to 100.2. She took some water about half an hour ago. Sleeping now. Robert nodded, gratitude overwhelming him. Thank you for staying. Martha waved off his thanks, but her expression changed as she glanced toward the living room. Who's that? Her name's Alexandra. She needed help. She's staying the night. Martha's eyebrows shot toward her hairline, disapproval radiating from her 5'2" frame. Robert Mitchell, have you lost your mind, bringing a stranger into this house with your daughter sleeping? She's not a stranger. Robert kept his voice low. She knew Catherine, was her patient at Memorial. This didn't seem to satisfy Martha. And the wheelchair, what happened there? Car accident. Look, I couldn't leave her at a bus stop in this weather. What would you have had me do? Martha pressed her lips into a thin line. Then with the directness that had sometimes terrified Robert when he was a child growing up next door to her, you always did have more heart than sense, Bobby Mitchell, just like your father. She gathered her coat and purse. I'll be back in the morning to check on Emma and to meet this friend of yours properly. After Martha left, Robert checked on Emma. The medicine was working. Her forehead felt cooler against his lips when he kissed her goodnight. Her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Carrots, was clutched tightly against her chest, her wild curls, so like Catherine's, spread across the pillow. Daddy, she mumbled without opening her eyes. Right here, sweetheart. Did you get my medicine? I did. And something else. We have a visitor who needs our help. Is that okay? Like when we helped that bird with the broken wing? Emma's voice was thick with sleep, but the comparison made Robert smile. Last spring, they'd rescued a cardinal with an injured wing, nursed it back to health over several weeks. Kind of like that, yeah. Okay. Can I meet them tomorrow if you're feeling better? Sleep now, baby. She was already drifting off again, one hand clutching Mr. Carrots, the other reaching for Robert's. He sat with her until her breathing deepened into sleep. When Robert returned to the living room, he found that Alexandra hadn't moved from just inside the doorway as if she was afraid to enter any further. I don't want to impose. Her voice had taken on that formal quality again, the CEO reasserting herself despite her circumstances. You're not. Are you hungry? I can heat up some soup. There's leftover chicken noodle. Emma's favorite when she's sick. Her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly and she flushed. Maybe a little hungry. Robert moved to the kitchen, pulling the container from the refrigerator and pouring its contents into a pot. He added a touch more salt, some extra pepper, the way Catherine had always done. He could feel Alexandra watching him from the doorway. Your neighbor didn't seem thrilled about me being here. The words weren't accusatory, just observational. Martha's protective. She's known Emma since she was born. Known me my whole life, actually. She'll come around. Robert poured the heated soup into a bowl and placed it on the small kitchen table, along with a glass of water and some crackers. It wasn't until Alexandra wheeled herself to the table and took her first spoonful that he realized how much this simple act of feeding another person had been missing from his life. Have you ever seen someone try not to cry over a bowl of soup? Robert watched as Alexandra took her first spoonful, her eyes closing as if it was a gourmet meal instead of something from a can that he doctored with extra pepper. When did you last eat? He asked gently. Yesterday morning. The shelter had breakfast before my time was up, the 30-day limit. She looked surprised when Robert nodded in understanding. You know about that? My shop does volunteer work sometimes. Riverside Shelter, right? They're good people, but overwhelmed. They tried to help me find somewhere else, gave me information about other places, but they're all full or don't have wheelchair access or... She stopped, took another spoonful of soup. It doesn't matter. I've slept in worse places. It does matter, Robert said firmly. You matter. The words seemed to break something in Alexandra. She set down her spoon, her hands trembling slightly. You don't understand. Nobody just helps anymore. There's always a catch, always something they want. So what do you want? Because I need to know now before I get comfortable, before I let myself believe. I want you to be safe tonight. I want you to be warm. I want you to eat until you're full and sleep without worrying about freezing or being hurt. That's all. Nobody does that for free. My wife did. The words came out before Robert could stop them. Catherine would have had you inside with a blanket and hot chocolate before I even finished parking the truck. She believed in helping, first asking questions later. She would have said it was the right thing to do. And what do you believe he thought about it? Really thought about it, not just reaching for the easy answer. I believe that we're all just trying to make it through. And sometimes on the really dark nights, we need someone to remind us that morning's coming. They sat in silence while Alexandra finished her soup. Then another bowl. Then a sandwich Robert insisted on making. As she ate, she began to talk. Small things at first. How she'd been a computer science prodigy. How she'd built her first company at 24. How she'd been on track to revolutionize cybersecurity before the accident. I had it all planned out. The next 5 years, the next 10. Alexandra's voice took on the cadence of someone used to pitching visions of the future. We were going to be the first line of defense against the next generation of cyber threats. I had a team of 30 brilliant engineers. We were doing something that mattered. You still could, Robert pointed out. The accident didn't change your mind. No, but try explaining that to anyone. They see the chair first. Sometimes they don't see anything else at all. It was nearly 200 a.m. when Robert showed Alexandra to the spare room. It was cluttered with boxes and Emma's old toys, but the bed was clean and the heat worked. This is too much, Alexandra started. It's a bed and a roof. That's not too much. That's basic human decency. He paused at the door. The bathroom's right across the hall. There are clean towels in the cabinet. If you need anything, Robert. Alexandra stopped him. Why did you really stop tonight? The truth. He turned back to face her. You want the truth? When I saw you there, I saw every night I felt invisible after Catherine died. Every night I sat in Emma's room wondering how I was going to make it to morning. I saw someone who needed to be seen, really seen, and I couldn't drive away from that. Alexandra nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. Thank you, she whispered. Get some rest. Tomorrow will figure itself out. But tomorrow came faster than expected. At 6:00 a.m., Robert woke to the sound of voices. Emma's high-pitched giggle and another voice patient and warm. He found them in the kitchen. Emma still in her pajamas, hair a wild nest of curls sitting at the table, while Alexandra braided her hair. "Dad," Emma announced, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "Miss Alexandra knows how to do a French braid, a real one," I can see that Robert said, trying to process the scene. His daughter, who usually took weeks to warm up to anyone chatting away like she'd known Alexandra forever. "She's in a wheelchair," Emma had informed him matter-of-factly. "Like Professor X. She's already told me about her accident, and I told her about Mom and Mr. Carrots. Did you know she can fix computers and make apps?" "Emma, let Miss Alexandra breathe," Robert said, starting the coffee maker. "It's fine," Alexandra said, securing the braid with one of Emma's purple hair ties. "She's been telling me about her volcano project." "Sounds like you have a future scientist here. It's supposed to erupt today, but I don't think I can go to school." Emma coughed for emphasis, though Robert noted it sounded less severe than yesterday. "Definitely staying home," Robert confirmed. "I'll email your teacher." "But my volcano," Emma's face fell. "We'll wait until you're better," Alexandra said gently. "Real scientists don't rush their experiments." That first day set a pattern none of them expected. Robert called into work. He had sick days saved up, and Frank, his boss at the auto shop, was understanding. The three of them spent the day in a strange but comfortable bubble. Alexandra helped Emma improve her volcano while Robert caught up on laundry and bills. Emma insisted on showing Alexandra every toy book and art project she'd ever made, and Alexandra listened with genuine interest that wasn't faked for a child's benefit. "She's really smart, Dad," Emma whispered loudly while Alexandra was in the bathroom. "And she doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." I noticed, Robert said, watching his daughter's face light up in a way it hadn't in months. That evening, while Emma napped on the couch, Alexandra insisted on looking at the electrical outlet in the kitchen that had been sparking. "You don't have to," Robert started. "I want to. It's dangerous, especially with Emma in the house." She examined the outlet with practiced eyes. "You have tools." 20 minutes later, she had diagnosed and fixed the problem. A loose wire that could have started a fire. "You saved us," Robert said, impressed. "You saved me first," Alexandra replied simply. The days began to blur together. Robert returned to work, but Alexandra stayed helping with Emma, organizing the chaos that had accumulated since Catherine's death, bringing order to their disrupted life. She insisted it was temporary, just until she figured out her next move. The shelter might have space next week, she mentioned on day 10. "Right," Robert said, trying to ignore the hollow feeling her words created. "Or there's a program downtown." "Emma would miss you," he interrupted, then cleared his throat. "I mean, if you left suddenly." "She's gotten attached." "Just Emma." The question hung unasked between them. By the end of the second week, a routine had formed. Alexandra would get Emma ready for school while Robert made breakfast. They'd all eat together, Robert and Emma trading silly jokes, while Alexandra offered deadpan commentary that made Emma giggle uncontrollably. Robert would drop Emma off on his way to work. Alexandra would spend the day applying for jobs online, making calls, fighting the bureaucracy that came with her situation. Another rejection, she said one afternoon when Robert came home early. "They say they're inclusive, but when they hear wheelchair, suddenly the position has been filled." "Their loss," Robert said firmly. "You fixed the electrical issue, the leaky faucet, and helped Emma build a website for her science project. Any company would be lucky to have you. House repairs don't pay bills. They do if you're an electrician or a software engineer. I never finished my degree after the accident. Too busy trying to save my company. So finish it. With what money? And how online programs cost as much as regular ones." That night, after Emma was asleep, Robert found Alexandra sitting in the living room, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," he said, sitting across from her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that I'm getting comfortable here, that Emma's getting attached, that I'm—" She stopped. "That you're what?" "That I'm starting to feel like I belong somewhere again. And that's dangerous because this isn't mine. This isn't permanent. This is just kindness with an expiration date." Robert moved to sit beside her on the couch. "What if it didn't have to be, Robert? No, listen. You're good for Emma. You're good for this house. You contribute, you help, you make things better. Why does it have to be temporary? Because that's not how the world works. People don't just take in strangers permanently. And I won't be anyone's charity case. I won't be the poor, paralyzed girl you felt sorry for. Is that what you think you are to us? Isn't it?" "No," Robert said firmly. You're the woman who makes Emma laugh at breakfast. You're the person who fixed the death trap outlet and the leaky faucet in the squeaky door. You're the one who helps with homework and watches movies with us and makes this house feel less empty. Alexandra looked up at him, vulnerability written across her face. I'm not Catherine. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to. Robert's voice softened. No one could replace her. But that doesn't mean there isn't room here for someone new. For you, Alexandra. Just you. The wheelchair is part of you, but it's not all of you. Not to us. The moment stretched between them, fragile and important. Then Emma's voice from the hallway broke it. Dad, Miss Alexandra. I had a bad dream. Alexandra moved first instinctively. Come here, little one. Emma climbed onto the couch between them, curling into Alexandra's side. I dreamed you left, she whispered to Alexandra. You went away like Mommy did. Oh, sweetheart, Alexandra said, her voice thick. I'm right here. Promise you won't leave. Alexandra looked at Robert over Emma's head. He saw the war in her eyes, the desire to comfort Emma, battling with the fear of making promises she couldn't keep. I promise I won't leave without saying goodbye, she finally said. And I promise that as long as I'm here, I'll keep you safe and loved. Emma mumbled, already falling back asleep. That's good enough for now. Have you ever watched someone realize their home? Robert saw it happen to Alexandra in that moment, holding Emma being needed, being wanted, being family. The next morning, the peaceful routine they'd established was shattered by a knock at the door. Robert opened it to find a man in his early 40s, tall with the same sandy hair as Robert, but none of the softness in his features. His suit probably cost more than Robert made in 2 weeks at the auto shop. David. Robert's stomach dropped. His older brother rarely visited and never unannounced. Hello, little brother. David's gaze traveled past Robert to where Alexandra sat at the kitchen table helping Emma with her math homework. And who might this be? This is Alexandra Cooper. She's staying with us for a while. Alexandra, this is my brother, David Mitchell. David's eyes narrowed as he took in the wheelchair, the casual domesticity of the scene. A while, how interesting. And how long is a while exactly? As long as she wants, Robert said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. David smiled tightly. Emma, sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for the event? The grown-ups need to talk. But Uncle David, I'm showing Miss Alexandra my fractions. Now, Emma, David's tone left no room for argument. Emma reluctantly gathered her papers and headed down the hall, casting worried glances over her shoulder. As soon as she was out of earshot, David turned to Robert. Have you completely lost your mind? Taking in some random woman off the street with Emma in the house. She's not some random woman, Robert felt his temper rising. Her name is Alexandra and she needed help. I'm sure she did. David's gaze flicked to Alexandra. No offense, but my brother has always been a soft touch for a sob story. What's the angle here? Money a place to crash until something better comes along. Alexandra's spine straightened, her CEO persona all emerging like armor. No angle, Mr. Mitchell. Your brother offered me temporary shelter when I had nowhere else to go. I've been trying to secure housing and employment, but as you might imagine, the job market isn't particularly welcoming to someone in my situation. And what exactly is your situation, David pressed, besides the obvious? The tension in the room crackled like static electricity. I was the CEO of Cooper Technologies until a car accident 2 years ago, spinal cord injury. While I was recovering, my business partner orchestrated a takeover. I lost my company, fought it in court, lost that too, and eventually lost everything else. I was released from the hospital after a minor procedure related to my injury with nowhere to go. Your brother found me at a bus stop. Her words were clipped, precise, daring him to challenge them. David looked unimpressed. And you just happened to run into my bleeding heart brother. Actually, Alexandra interjected before Robert could speak. I knew his wife. Catherine was my nurse after the accident. That's how Robert recognized me. David's expression faltered for the first time. He hadn't expected that. Robert could. I have a word, privately. David gestured to the back porch. Once outside, David turned on him. I don't care if she knew Catherine or the Queen of England. You can't just move a complete stranger into your house with Emma. She's not a stranger anymore, David. It's been, 2 weeks, 3. That's not enough time to know someone's character. What if she's dangerous? What if she's using you? She fixed the electrical outlet that was about to burn the house down. She's helping Emma with her homework. She's been applying for jobs every day. And when she gets one, then what? She moves out and Emma has to deal with losing another mother figure. The implication knocked the air from Robert's lungs. It's not like that, isn't it? I see the way you look at her, Bobby. You're setting yourself up for disaster. And worse, you're setting Emma up for heartbreak. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that you've been a wreck since Catherine died. I know that you're lonely. I know that it's easy to mistake gratitude for something deeper. Robert's fists clenched at his sides. This isn't your decision to make. You're right, it's not. But if you don't come to your senses, I will have to take steps. As Emma's uncle and her only other living relative, I have a responsibility. What does that mean? It means that if I think you're putting Emma at risk with your poor judgment, I'll petition for custody. The threat hung in the air between them, hot and poisonous. You wouldn't dare. Try me. David's voice was ice. I have resources you don't, Bobby. I have connections. And right now, from where I'm standing, you look like a man making reckless choices that endanger his daughter. Robert stepped closer, anger burning through him. Get out of my house. Think about what I said. You have 1 week to sort this situation out, or I'm calling my attorney. David brushed past him back through the house, pausing only briefly in the doorway. Nice meeting you, Miss Cooper. I'd start looking for other arrangements if I were you. After he left, Robert found Alexandra in the living room, her face pale. I heard she said simply, Emma's in her room. I told her everything was fine, but she's upset. Robert sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I'm sorry about that. David has always been difficult. He's not wrong, Robert. Alexandra's voice was gentle. This arrangement was always meant to be temporary. I've overstayed my welcome. That's not true. It is. I'm putting you and Emma in a difficult position. If your brother calls child services, he won't. He's bluffing. Are you willing to take that chance with Emma? The question hung heavy between them. I'll start looking for a place tomorrow. Alexandra continued. The women's shelter might have an accessible room open by next week. And if they don't, Robert asked, then what? I'll figure something out. I always do. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Emma's bedroom door opening. She appeared in the hallway, eyes red from crying. Is Miss Alexandra leaving? She asked, her voice small. Robert and Alexandra exchanged glances, neither wanting to be the one to confirm her fears. Come here, kiddo, Robert said, patting the couch beside him. Emma climbed up between them, a spot that had become hers over the past weeks. Uncle David thinks Miss Alexandra should find her own place, Robert explained carefully. But why? She belongs here with us. Emma's lower lip trembled. She helps me with homework and makes the pancakes the right way and fixes things when they break. I know, sweetheart, but you promised. Emma turned to Alexandra, tears streaming now. You promised you wouldn't leave without saying goodbye, and you promised to keep me safe and loved. Alexandra's composure cracked, a tear slipping down her cheek. I did promise that, and I meant it. Then stay, Emma insisted. We want you here. Right, Dad? Robert looked at his daughter's pleading face, then at Alexandra's conflicted one. Yes, he said softly. We want you here. I want you here. Alexandra closed her eyes briefly. This is complicated, Emma. Your uncle is worried about Uncle David is a butthead, Emma declared with sudden ferocity. He only visits on Christmas and my birthday, and he always brings boring presents. Despite everything, Robert found himself laughing. That's not a nice word, Emma. Well, he's not being very nice, Emma crossed her arms. And he's wrong. Miss Alexandra makes us happy. She makes you smile again, Dad. You didn't smile for a really long time after Mom died, but now you do. The simplicity of Emma's observation struck Robert like a physical blow. She was right. The heaviness that had settled on him after Catherine's death had lightened these past weeks. He found himself laughing again, making jokes, looking forward to coming home. And it was because of Alexandra. Alexandra was watching him, something unreadable in her expression. The next morning after Robert dropped Emma at school, Alexandra made her announcement. I found a job. Robert looked up from his coffee, surprise mingling with dread. That's great. What kind of job? Alexandra's eyes gleamed with something like her old confidence. Remote software development for an accessibility tech company. Not CEO level, but it's a start. They're willing to work with my situation. That's fantastic. When do you start? Monday? It doesn't pay much, but it's enough for a small apartment. Robert felt his heart sink as she continued. I've already found a place that's accessible. It's not far from here, actually, just a few miles away. So you're leaving. It's for the best, Robert. Your brother was right about one thing. This arrangement was always meant to be temporary. I've imposed on your kindness long enough. You haven't imposed, Robert argued. We want you here. Emma and I both. Alexandra wheeled closer to him. That's why I have to go, because what we want and what's best aren't always the same thing. Emma's already lost one mother. She can't go through that again if things don't work out. If what doesn't work out, Robert challenged. Us. The word hung between them, charged with meaning. There is no us, Robert Alexander said gently. There's you being kind to someone in need. There's Emma getting attached to a temporary presence in her life. And there's me, grateful but realistic. Is that what you think this is? Just gratitude? What else could it be? We barely know each other. That's not true, and you know it. Robert's voice intensified. I know that you drink your coffee black, but secretly prefer it with cream and sugar. I know that you're fiercely independent, but you let Emma help you reach things sometimes, because it makes her feel useful. I know that you're brilliant with computers, but terrible at car games because you can't bluff to save your life. He took a breath. I know that you had a cat named Algorithm in college, and that you miss him almost as much as your company. I know that you cry during animated movies, but try to hide it. I know that when you're working on a problem, you twist your hair around your finger just like Emma does. Alexandra looked stunned. And you know me too, Robert continued. You know I'm terrified of failing Emma, of not being enough without Catherine. You know I work on engines because machines make sense when people don't. You know I stress clean when I'm worried and that I can't cook anything more complicated than pancakes. Robert moved closer, kneeling to meet her at eye level. This isn't gratitude, Alexandra. This is something else, something real. Alexandra's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I'm broken, Robert. Not just the chair. Everything, my career, my independence, my future. I can't have children. The accident damaged more than just my spine. If you want more kids, I want you, Robert interrupted. Emma wants you. We want this family, the one we already have. I'm in a wheelchair. Alexandra continued, her voice breaking. I have bad days when I can barely get out of bed. I have medical bills that will follow me forever. We all have our challenges, Robert said softly. The chair doesn't change how I feel about you. It's part of you, and I care about all of you. Alexandra looked away. This is crazy. We've known each other for less than a month. Sometimes you just know, Robert said simply. Catherine and I got engaged after 6 weeks. Everyone said we were rushing. We had 5 beautiful years together. I've never regretted a single day. Alexandra was silent for a long moment. Then I need time, Robert. This is all happening so fast. Your brother's ultimatum, the job offer, Emma's attachment to me. My feelings for both of you, I need to think. Robert nodded slowly. Take all the time you need. Just promise me you won't make any decisions without talking to me first. No disappearing acts. I promise, Alexandra said. No disappearing acts. That afternoon, while Alexandra was on a video call with her new employer, the doorbell rang. Robert opened it to find Martha Fletcher on his doorstep, arms crossed. You've got trouble, Bobby. She pushed past him into the house. Hello to you too, Martha. Robert sighed. What trouble would that be? Your brother's been talking all over town about your arrangement here. He stopped by my house this morning, asking questions about how long she's been here, if I've noticed anything suspicious. Robert felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. What did you tell him? Martha snorted. I told him to mind his own business, that's what. I've known you since you were in diapers, Bobby Mitchell. You're not the kind of man who makes foolish choices where Emma is concerned. She glanced toward the hallway where Alexandra's voice could be heard faintly from the spare room. But that doesn't mean David isn't dangerous. He always was the mean one, even as a boy. Always had to be right, had to win at all costs. Martha's expression softened. How are things really with her? Robert ran a hand through his hair. Complicated. She found a job. She's planning to move out. And you don't want her to. It wasn't a question. No, Robert admitted, I don't, and neither does Emma. Martha studied him for a long moment. You're in love with her. The words hit him like a physical blow. Was he This complicated, fierce, broken, brilliant woman who had wheeled into their lives barely 3 weeks ago. I could be, he said, finally. Given time. Time is exactly what David won't give you, Martha pointed out. He's talking about lawyers, Bobby. Custody hearings. He's bluffing. Robert tried to sound more confident than he felt, and is he? Martha raised an eyebrow. The Mitchell boys were always stubborn as mules, but David's got money behind his stubborn. Think about that. After Martha left, Robert sat on the porch watching the neighborhood kids play in the autumn leaves. In a few hours, he'd need to pick Emma up from school. Life continuing its normal rhythms, while everything else seemed to be crumbling around him. He didn't hear Alexandra wheel onto the porch until she spoke. Your neighbor seemed concerned. Robert glanced up. Martha's always concerned about something. Usually me. She's not wrong to be. Alexandra's face was somber. Your brother is serious, Robert. I looked him up. David Mitchell's senior partner, Grayson and Mitchell, specializes in family law, has never lost a custody case. The information settled like lead in Robert's stomach. You looked him up. I'm good with computers. Remember, I needed to know what we're dealing with. Robert caught the pronoun, a flicker of hope igniting. Alexandra met his gaze steadily. I've been thinking about what you said, about us, about family. She took a deep breath. I care about you and Emma, more than I thought possible in such a short time. But I also care about what's best for you both. And right now, with David's threats hanging over your head, what's best might be for me to take that job and find my own place, at least until things settle down. Robert felt something inside him rebel at the thought. Running has never solved anything. If David wants a fight, we'll give him one. Alexandra's eyes widened. Yes, unless you don't want to. The question hung between them, fragile as spun glass. It's not about what I want, Robert, Alexandra said softly. It's about what's right. And what if they're the same thing? Robert leaned forward, capturing her gaze with his. What if what's right is us together, fighting for this family we've started to build? You barely know me. Alexandra's voice wavered. I know enough. Robert's hand found hers. I know you're stubborn and proud and brilliant. I know you make Emma laugh and help her with homework and treat her like a person, not just a kid. I know you fix things, not just broken outlets, but broken routines, broken spaces, broken people. His voice softened. I know that when you think no one's watching, you look at us, at Emma and me, with such longing it breaks my heart. Like you're memorizing us, storing up the memories for when you're gone. Alexandra's fingers tightened around his. I'm scared, Robert. Not just of your brother or what people might think. I'm scared of believing in this in us and then losing it all again. I don't think I could survive another loss like that. You won't have to, not if I have anything to say about it. The moment stretched between them, pregnant with possibility. Then Alexandra's phone rang, shattering the silence. She checked the screen and frowned. It's my new boss. I should take this. Robert nodded, releasing her hand. We'll finish this conversation later. As Alexandra wheeled back inside to take the call, Robert remained on the porch watching the sky darken with approaching storm clouds. A perfect mirror for the gathering storm in his own life. Whatever came next, David's threats, Alexandra's fears, his own doubts. One thing was certain, the Mitchell family had always been fighters, and he would fight for this new family they were building with everything he had. Alexandra's new job began the following Monday. She set up a workstation in the corner of the living room, her laptop perched on a small desk Robert had moved in from the garage. The normalcy of it struck him each morning as he prepared for his shift at the auto shop. Alexandra with her coffee fingers flying across the keyboard and already deep in code before Emma had even finished her breakfast cereal. Emma adapted to the new routine with the resilience of childhood, delighted to find Alexandra still there each afternoon when Robert dropped her off after school. The temporary solution had begun to feel almost permanent, though David's ultimatum hung over them like a storm cloud on the horizon. The first paycheck arrived in Alexandra's bank account on Friday. Robert found her staring at her phone that evening, a strange expression on her face. It's not much, but it's mine. First money I've earned since the accident. The emotion in her voice transcended pride. It was resurrection, the first tangible evidence that her old self still existed. We should celebrate. Robert moved to the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of sparkling cider he'd picked up on his way home. No alcohol because of her medication, but the gesture stood. Emma, who had been coloring at the kitchen table, looked up with sudden interest. Like a party? Exactly like a party. Alexandra's smile reached her eyes, the first genuine one Robert had seen since David's visit. A very small three-person party with pizza and maybe a movie. The simplicity of the suggestion, so domestic, so normal, caught in Robert's throat. This was what he'd missed since Catherine died. Not just the big moments, but these small, ordinary celebrations that anchored a family's life. They ordered pizza and watched Emma's choice of movie, some animated feature about a family of superheroes. Robert found himself watching Alexandra more than the screen, the way she laughed at the jokes, the gentle teasing she exchanged with Emma, the comfortable silence that had developed between all three of them. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Alexandra wheeled out onto the porch where Robert sat watching the stars. The October chill had deepened, winter announcing its approach in the bite of the evening air. "I need to tell you something." Alexandra's voice carried a weight that immediately put Robert on alert. "David came to see me today." The words landed like a physical blow. "Here when while you were at work and Emma was at school. He said he knew I'd gotten a job, that it was a good start, but not enough." Robert's hands curled into fists. "What else did he say? That I should leave before things get messy? That he has friends at the Department of Children's Services? That if I really cared about you and Emma, I'd walk away?" "You can't walk, Alexandra." The words escaped before Robert could stop them, inappropriate humor in the face of threat. To his surprise, Alexandra laughed, a sharp, startled sound. "No, I can't," which I pointed out to your brother in slightly less polite terms. Robert could picture it, Alexandra confronting David with the same steel he'd glimpsed during their first meeting, refusing to be intimidated. "He'll follow through, you know. On Monday." That's what he said. Alexandra's voice softened. "I think he means it, Robert." Monday. 3 days away. The timeline had moved up, David's patience evidently worn thin. "Let him." The certainty in Robert's voice surprised even him. "We haven't done anything wrong. You're living here legally, contributing to the household. Emma is happy, healthy, going to school, doing her homework. There's nothing for any court to find fault with." Alexandra's silence spoke volumes. "You can't be sure of that. Your brother knows, the system knows, the judges. I know my daughter." Robert leaned forward and elbows on his knees. "And I know what's best for her. This, us, is what's best. A family, however unconventional. Are we a family?" The question hung between them, invisible but palpable. "I'd like us to be." The words came easier than Robert expected. "If you wanted that too." Alexandra's gaze dropped to her hands resting in her lap. "I'm still broken, Robert. The chair isn't going away. The medical bills, the bad days. None of that changes just because I have a job now." "Who isn't broken?" Robert countered. "I've been barely holding it together for 3 years. Emma still has nightmares about losing her mother. The world breaks everyone, Alexandra. The trick is finding the people whose broken pieces fit with yours." He hadn't meant it to sound romantic, but the words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning neither was quite ready to name. Alexandra's phone chimed with an incoming email. She glanced at it, then froze, her face draining of color. "What is it?" "It's from Tech Vault. That's where I used to work before." She paused, scanning the screen. "It's from my old assistant, James. He says there's something I need to see. An internal memo that just leaked." Robert waited as she read, watching emotions chase across her face. Shock, anger, then something harder to define. They knew. The whole time they knew it wasn't my fault. The accident. They claimed I was texting while driving, that I violated company policy. But this memo. She turned the phone so Robert could see. "From my former partner to the legal team, dated 3 days after the crash. Acknowledging I wasn't at fault, but recommending they fight the insurance claim anyway because it would be cheaper than paying out." The corporate callousness staggered Robert. "But that's illegal, isn't it?" "Only if they got caught." Alexandra's voice had taken on that CEO edge again, cold and precise. "And they made sure all evidence disappeared. Until now." "What does this mean?" "It means I might have a case against them. For fraud, for wrongful termination, for the insurance denial. It means," Alexandra's expression shifted from shock to something like hope. It means I might get my life back. Part of it, at least. Robert should have felt happy for her. This was vindication, justice long delayed. Instead, a selfish fear crept in. If Alexandra regained her former life, the successful career, the financial security, would she still want this life he was offering? This modest house in a working-class neighborhood, a mechanic for a partner, the daily challenges of raising a child not her own. He pushed the thought away. What will you do? Contact a lawyer first thing Monday. See if this is enough to reopen the case. The timing struck them both at the same time. Monday, the same day David planned to make good on his threat. One battle at a time, Robert reached for her hand. Let me worry about David. You focus on this. Alexandra's fingers intertwined with his. You know this could take months, even years. There's no guarantee. There never is. Robert squeezed her hand gently. But that doesn't mean we don't try. The weekend passed in a blur of normal family activities threaded through with tension. Robert took Emma to her soccer game on Saturday morning, while Alexandra prepared for her potential legal battle, researching lawyers specializing in corporate fraud and wrongful termination. That evening, they all worked together in the backyard, raking leaves into piles that Emma gleefully jumped into. Sunday brought rain, confining them to the house. Alexandra helped Emma with a science project, while Robert tackled the growing mountain of laundry. Mundane tasks that felt precious now, knowing that tomorrow might change everything. Monday dawned clear and cold. Robert woke earlier than usual, anxiety a live wire beneath his skin. He found Alexandra already in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, dark circles beneath her eyes, testament to a sleepless night. Did you sleep at all? A few hours? Alexandra's smile didn't reach her eyes. I have a video consultation with a lawyer at 10. And I called in to work. Frank wasn't happy, but he understands. I'm going to take Emma to school, then come back here. If David's serious about involving authorities, I want to be present. They moved through the morning routine with forced normalcy, shielding Emma from their apprehension. Robert packed her lunch, checked her homework, reminded her about her after-school math club, all the while watching the clock, wondering if this would be the last normal morning they'd have together. After dropping Emma at school, Robert returned to find Alexandra finishing her consultation call. Her expression gave nothing away as she thanked the lawyer and ended the video chat. Well, they think I have a case, a strong one potentially. The memo proves they deliberately misrepresented the facts to avoid paying out my insurance claim. If we can find more evidence of the coordinated cover-up, there could be substantial damages. The news should have been purely positive, but the lawyer's use of substantial damages hung in the air between them. Money that could give Alexandra options beyond this makeshift family they'd created. That's great news. Robert meant it, despite his fears. It's a start. Alexandra ran a hand through her hair, a gesture he'd come to recognize as her processing complex information. The lawyer wants to move quickly to file initial paperwork this week. She thinks we can... The doorbell interrupted her, its ordinary chime suddenly ominous. Robert's stomach clenched. That'll be David. But when he opened the door, it wasn't his brother standing on the porch. Instead, two strangers, a woman in a crisp pantsuit and a uniformed police officer, regarded him with professional detachment. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Karen Winters from the Department of Children's Services. This is Officer Ramirez. We need to speak with you regarding a concern that's been raised about your daughter's welfare. The formality of the words couldn't disguise their seriousness. David had made good on his threat, and sooner than expected. Robert stepped aside, inviting them in with a calmness he didn't feel. Of course. Please come in. Ms. Winters entered first, her gaze sweeping the living room, taking in Alexandra at her workstation. The evidence of Emma's presence in the toys neatly stacked in a basket, the family photos on the walls. Ms. Cooper. The caseworker addressed Alexandra directly. I understand you're currently residing here. That's correct. Alexandra's voice carried the same professional tone she used in business calls. I've been staying with the Mitchells for approximately 1 month while searching for accessible housing. I'm currently employed remotely with Secure Space Technologies. The calculated precision of her response impressed Robert. She was establishing fax credentials normalcy. I see, and your relationship with Mr. Mitchell and his daughter is... Alexandra glanced at Robert, a silent question in her eyes. Alexandra is a friend who needed help. Robert interjected. She's become part of our family. Ms. Winters made a note on her tablet, and she sleeps where? In the spare bedroom. Robert gestured down the hall. Would you like to see the house? The next 30 minutes proceeded like an invasion conducted with clipboard efficiency. Ms. Winters inspected every room, opening closets, checking the refrigerator, examining Emma's bedroom with particular attention. Officer Ramirez remained largely silent, but his presence added weight to the proceedings. In the kitchen, Ms. Winters finally came to the point. Mr. Mitchell, we received a report expressing concern about an unrelated adult living in your home with your minor daughter. The report suggested this arrangement was hastily established without proper vetting, potentially placing your daughter at risk. The words were clinical, but the implication burned. David had painted Alexandra as a threat, a stranger Robert had recklessly brought into Emma's life. That's not accurate. Robert kept his voice measured with effort. Alexandra is not a stranger. She was a patient of my late wife at Memorial Hospital. She needed temporary housing after being discharged following a medical procedure. She has become a positive influence in Emma's life, helping with homework, providing stability while I work. Ms. Winters' expression revealed nothing. And how long do you anticipate this arrangement continuing? The question struck at the heart of what Robert and Alexandra had yet to fully resolve. Their eyes met across the kitchen. We're still determining that. Robert chose his words carefully. But it's a decision we're making together with Emma's best interests as our priority. Ms. Winters made another note, then turned to Alexandra. Ms. Cooper, do you have any history with Child Protective Services? Any criminal record? No to both. Alexandra met the caseworker's gaze directly. I built and ran a technology company before my accident. You're welcome to run whatever background checks you need. Something in her calm confidence seemed to register with Miss Winters. Her next question came with slightly less edge. In your plans moving forward? I've recently secured employment, Alexandra replied. I'm also pursuing legal action against my former company based on new evidence of wrongful termination. Depending on the outcome, I hope to eventually find a more permanent housing solution. The deliberate ambiguity of permanent housing solution wasn't lost on Robert. She hadn't committed to staying or leaving. Ms. Winters completed her notes, then addressed them both. I'll need to speak with Emma as well, and Mr. Mitchell's brother who filed the report. For now, I don't see any immediate cause for concern, but we will be following up. The conditional reassurance loosened the knot in Robert's chest slightly when Ms. Winters and Officer Ramirez finally departed, promising to return later in the week to speak with Emma. Robert sank onto the couch in exhaustion. That could have been worse. It's not over. Alexandra wheeled closer, her expression troubled. Your brother won't stop here. He's invested now, his pride's at stake. The observation struck Robert as insightful and troubling. David had always been competitive, always needed to win. Even as children, a simple game of catch could become a battle of wills. I should move out, Alexander continued, at least temporarily, until this blows over. No. The force of Robert's response surprised them both. That's exactly what David wants, to scare us into compliance. If you leave now, it looks like we have something to hide. Alexandra studied him, her analytical mind working through scenarios. You might be right, but is it worth the risk? To Emma. The question cut deep. Was he letting his feelings for Alexandra cloud his judgment about what was best for his daughter? Before he could answer, Alexandra's phone rang. Her new boss at Secure Space. She excused herself to take the call in the spare room, leaving Robert alone with his thoughts. The front door opened 15 minutes later, catching Robert off guard. David stood on the threshold, impeccable in his tailored suit, a triumphant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I see you've had visitors this morning. His voice carried the practiced smoothness of a courtroom performance. I hope Ms. Winters wasn't too invasive. She's thorough but fair. The calculated cruelty of the ambush ignited Robert's anger. You couldn't even give me a warning. Had to send strangers to interrogate me in my own home. David stepped inside uninvited, closing the door behind him. I gave you a week to sort this out. You didn't. Actions have consequences, Bobby. The childhood nickname, once affectionate, now dripped with condescension. This isn't about Emma's welfare. Robert kept his voice low, conscious of Alexandra in the next room. This is about control. It always has been with you. David's smile faded. This is about protecting my niece from your poor judgment. First, you moved to this neighborhood when you could have accepted my offer to help with a down payment in a better school district. Then you bring in some random woman. Her name is Alexandra. Robert's patience snapped. She has a name, a history, skills, dreams. She's not some random woman. She's someone I care about, someone Emma cares about. David's eyebrows rose. Oh, and how long before she decides she's had enough of playing house with a mechanic and his kid? When the novelty wears off or a better opportunity comes along? The question struck too close to Robert's own fears. He changed tactics. Why does this bother you so much? Really, is it just that I'm making decisions without your approval? Or is it something else? David's face hardened. You want the truth? Fine, I think you're dishonoring Catherine's memory. It's been, what, 3 years, and you're already replacing her with the first hard luck case that rolls across your path. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Robert had wrestled with this same thought in the dark hours of the night, whether his growing feelings for Alexandra somehow betrayed Catherine's memory. Before he could respond, Alexandra appeared in the hallway, having evidently heard enough. Mr. Mitchell. Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. I understand your concern for your niece. It speaks well of you as an uncle, but you're operating under several misconceptions. David's surprise at her direct approach was evident, but he recovered quickly. Enlighten me, Miss Cooper. First, I knew your sister-in-law. Catherine Mitchell was my nurse after my accident. She showed me kindness when I needed it most, including photos of her beautiful daughter and stories of her devoted husband. Alexandra wheeled closer, her posture, straight eyes unwavering. Second, I'm not playing house with anyone. I'm rebuilding my life after losing everything. My mobility, my company, my independence. Your brother offered temporary shelter, which I've repaid by contributing to this household in every way possible. Her gaze held David's unwavering. Third, and most importantly, your accusations dishonor Catherine far more than our arrangement ever could. From what I knew of her, and from what Robert and Emma have shared, she valued compassion above all else. She would have been the first person to offer help to someone in need. The room fell silent after Alexandra's words. David's expression flickered between anger and something less definable. Perhaps the first glimmer of doubt. The moment shattered as Robert's phone rang. Emma's school. He answered immediately, tension spiking. Yes, this is Robert Mitchell. The blood drained from his face as he listened. I'll be right there. He ended the call, already reaching for his keys. Emma's missing. She never came back after lunch break. They've searched the school. She's gone. David's demeanor changed instantly, brotherly rivalry giving way to genuine concern. What? How could they lose her? I don't know. Robert was already heading for the door. But I need to get there. Now, I'm coming with you. Alexandra was already maneuvering toward the door. David looked between them, momentarily forgotten in the crisis. I'll follow in my car. The school parking lot buzzed with activity, teachers searching the grounds, the principal meeting them at the entrance with apologies and explanations that blurred in Robert's panic-stricken mind. Emma had been at lunch, had asked to use the bathroom, and simply hadn't returned. No one had seen her leave. Could she have gone home? The principal suggested. Sometimes when children are upset, she doesn't have a key. Robert's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. And why would she be upset? She was fine this morning. Alexandra, who had been silent since their arrival, suddenly spoke up. The cemetery. Where's Catherine buried? Robert stared at her, the suggestion clicking into place with terrible clarity. St. Michael's, about 6 blocks from here. He didn't question how Alexandra knew about Catherine's gravesite. Emma must have mentioned it during one of their many conversations. What mattered was the insight itself, the understanding of a child's mind in crisis. The 3 adults arrived at St. Michael's Cemetery 10 minutes later, Robert practically leaping from his truck before it fully stopped. David pulled in behind him, for once united in purpose with his brother. Alexandra waited in the truck, the cemetery's uneven ground impossible for her wheelchair. They found Emma exactly where Alexandra had predicted, sitting cross-legged before Catherine's headstone, her backpack beside her, talking softly to the marble marker, as if conversing with her mother. Emma. The relief in Robert's voice brought his daughter's head up as sharply. Her face was streaked with tears, but otherwise she appeared unharmed. Dad, I'm sorry, I just needed to talk to Mom. Robert knelt beside her, fighting the urge to scold, to express the terror of the past hour. Instead, he simply asked about what sweetheart. Emma's lower lip trembled. About Miss Alexandra. And Uncle David trying to make her leave. And how I don't want another mom to go away. The raw honesty of a child cut through all adult pretense. Robert gathered Emma into his arms, holding her against the October chill that had settled into her small frame. Uncle David isn't trying to make Alexandra leave. He's just worried about us. Robert chose his words carefully, aware of his brother standing a few feet away. Emma pulled back, fixing him with Catherine's direct gaze. That's not true. I heard you talking. He wants her gone because he thinks you're forgetting Mom. But that's stupid. No one could forget Mom. The simplicity of her assessment landed with unexpected force. From the mouth of babes, indeed. David stepped forward, crouching to Emma's level. Your dad's right, I was worried. But I didn't understand everything. I'm sorry I scared you, Squirt. The childhood nickname, one only David used, brought a fresh wave of tears to Emma's eyes. She lunged toward her uncle, small arms wrapping around his neck. I don't want everyone fighting, her words were muffled against David's shoulder. I just want us to be a family again. With Miss Alexandra, too. The moment stretched between the brothers, decades of competition and misunderstanding, suspended in the face of a child's distress. Let's get you back to school, kiddo, Robert finally broke the silence. A lot of people are worried about you. As they walked back to the vehicles, Emma's hand firmly in Robert's. David fell into step beside them. We need to talk. Real talk, Bobby. No accusations, no defensiveness. His voice had lost its courtroom polish, revealing the brother Robert remembered from childhood. Tonight after Emma's in bed. Robert nodded, a tentative truce established in the wake of crisis. Alexandra was waiting anxiously in the truck, relief washing over her face at the sight of Emma safe and sound. She opened her arms and Emma climbed in without hesitation, nestling against her as if she belonged there. I was so worried about you, little scientist. Her voice was soft but carried an undertone of genuine fear. Please don't disappear like that again. I went to talk to my mom, Emma explained as if this made perfect sense. About family stuff. Alexandra's eyes met Robert's over Emma's head, a silent question passing between them. He gave a slight nod. They would discuss it later. After returning Emma to school with promises that she'd face appropriate consequences for her unauthorized field trip, Robert drove Alexandra home in silence. The emotional weight of the morning pressed down on them both. David's car pulled in behind them as they reached the house. The inevitable conversation loomed. Inside, the three adults faced each other in the living room, yesterday's adversaries attempting to find common ground. Emma could have been hurt today. David spoke first, his lawyer's precision giving way to genuine concern. She could have been hit by a car or approached by a stranger or any number of terrible things. I know. Robert's admission came easily. The fear still lingered in his bones, the terrible possibilities David outlined. This situation, whatever it is between you two, it's affecting her. David continued, she's confused, scared of more loss, and that's on both of you. The accusation stung because it contained truth. They had been so caught up in their own developing feelings, in fighting David's interference, that they'd missed Emma's growing anxiety. You're right, Alexandra's acknowledgement surprised both brothers. We haven't been clear enough with Emma about what's happening. That's our failure. Her use of our, claiming joint responsibility for Emma's well-being, didn't escape David's notice. So what is happening here exactly? His gaze moved between them. Because from where I stand, it looks like two people playing house without any clear plan for the future. And Emma deserves better than that. The challenge hung in the air, demanding an answer neither Robert nor Alexandra had fully formulated. What were they to each other? What future were they building? Robert looked at Alexandra, seeking permission in her eyes before speaking for them both. We care about each other. It started as one person helping another, but it's become more than that. For both of us. The admission, simple as it was, lifted a weight he hadn't recognized was there. Beside him, Alexandra's posture softened slightly, her hand finding his. And long-term, David pressed. Because children need stability, not maybes or will sees. Alexandra answered this time. Long-term is complicated by several factors. My legal case against my former company, finding appropriate, accessible housing, my health challenges. She paused, then continued with characteristic directness. But one thing isn't complicated. I love Emma, and I care deeply for Robert. Whatever form our future takes, those facts won't change. The declaration, falling just short of the word love, in Robert's case, nevertheless set his heart racing. They hadn't spoken those words yet, had circled around them in moments of vulnerability. David studied them both, legal training evident in his assessment. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair, in a gesture so like Robert's that the family resemblance suddenly sharpened. I'm still not convinced this is the best situation, but I'm willing to step back if you two can prove you're putting Emma first. No more uncertainty. She needs to understand what's happening, what the plan is. Robert nodded, acknowledging the reasonableness of the request. In the Department of Children's Services, I'll call Ms. Winters, explain that Emma's school incident was a family misunderstanding that's been resolved. David's concession came grudgingly, but they'll still want to interview Emma, and they'll be watching. This isn't over. After David left, Robert and Alexandra sat in stunned silence. The truce felt fragile, conditional on their ability to define a relationship they were still discovering. Did you mean it? Robert finally asked. What you said about Emma, about us? Alexandra met his gaze directly. Every word. I just wasn't sure you were ready to hear it. The admission hung between them, an invitation neither was quite ready to accept or decline. Instead, Robert reached for her hand, a simpler truth in the connection of skin to skin. We need to talk to Emma, together, about what happens next. Alexandra nodded, her fingers tightening around his. And we need to decide what that is. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Whatever came next would reshape 3 lives irrevocably. The temporary shelter of uncertainty was giving way to the harder work of building something lasting. Outside, the October sky darkened toward evening, the promise of first frost glittering in the air. Inside, 2 broken people contemplated the risk of becoming whole again together. Emma sat on the living room floor, her homework spread before her in organized chaos. The tension from yesterday's cemetery escapade had faded somewhat, replaced by a tentative normality. Alexandra worked at her makeshift desk while Robert prepared dinner, the sounds of chopping vegetables drifting from the kitchen. The conversation they needed to have with Emma weighed on them both. David's demand for clarity wasn't wrong. The child deserved better than the uncertain limbo they'd been navigating. But how to explain adult feelings that they themselves were still understanding? Robert appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Emma, can you put your homework away for a few minutes? Alexandra and I need to talk with you about something important. Emma's eyes darted between them, wariness replacing concentration. Her small shoulders tensed, preparing for bad news. Is Alexandra leaving? Her voice was small but direct, cutting to her greatest fear. Robert sat on the couch, patting the spot beside him. Emma reluctantly abandoned her schoolwork to join him, legs tucked beneath her. Alexandra wheeled closer, completing their triangle. No, I'm not leaving. Alexandra reached for Emma's hand. But things are changing, and we want to talk to you about what that means. The past few weeks have been unusual, Robert began. None of us planned for Alexandra to stay with us, but sometimes life surprises you with the people you need most. Emma nodded solemnly, like when Mom died and Mrs. Fletcher brought us casseroles every day for a month. The comparison, so typically Emma, in its blend of profound and practical, loosened something in Robert's chest. Yes, exactly like that. People step in when you need them, sometimes in ways you never expected. He glanced at Alexandra, who picked up the thread. When your dad found me at that bus stop, I was at my lowest point. I'd lost everything. My job, my home, even my belief that things could get better. So Dad rescued you. Emma's eyes shone with the simplicity of childhood understanding, like a superhero. Alexandra smiled. Yes, he did. But then something unexpected happened. You both rescued me in a different way. You gave me a reason to keep fighting to rebuild my life. Emma twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a habit so like Alexandra's that Robert's heart clenched. So you're staying forever? The directness of the question hung in the air. Alexandra took a breath. I'd like to stay, if that's okay with you and your dad. Not just as a guest anymore, but as part of your family. The word family carried weight beyond its 2 syllables. Robert watched his daughter process this, her face scrunched in concentration. Would you be my new mom? Emma's question stripped away adult pretense, demanding honesty. Alexandra's eyes met Robert's briefly before she answered. I could never replace your mom, Emma. No one could. Catherine will always be your mother, and from everything I've heard, she was amazing. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I would be honored to be another person who loves you. Not a replacement, but an addition. If that's something you might want someday. Emma considered this, the gravity of her contemplation visible in her furrowed brow. Like in Tyler's family, he has a real mom and a stepmom. They both come to his soccer games. The comparison offered welcome clarity. Yes, something like that, Robert confirmed. Alexandra and I care about each other, and we both care about you. We're thinking about building a life together, the three of us. But only if you're okay with that. Emma's gaze turned to Alexandra, scrutinizing. Would I call you Mom? The question caught Alexandra off guard. Her composure wavered for the first time. That would be entirely up to you, Emma. You could call me Alexandra or Ms. Alexandra or whatever feels right to you. There's no rush to decide. Emma nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. She was silent for a long moment, then asked, does this mean Uncle David won't be mad anymore? Robert exchanged a glance with Alexandra. Uncle David was worried about changes happening too fast without enough planning. He wants to make sure you feel safe and happy. I told him I am. Emma's tone carried a hint of exasperation. At the cemetery, I told him I like having Alexandra here. Yes, you did. Robert brushed a curl from her forehead. And I think he heard you. He's trying to understand. Emma seemed to consider this, then delivered her verdict with childlike finality. Okay, Alexandra can stay and be part of our family. But she has to promise to help with my science fair project. I want to win first place this year. The simple condition, so perfectly Emma, broke the tension. Alexandra laughed, a sound of genuine relief. I promise. First place or bust. The conversation shifted then to dinner plans and homework completion, the momentous decision incorporated into their daily routine with the remarkable adaptability of childhood. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Robert and Alexandra sat on the porch, the night air crisp with late October's bite. That went better than I expected. Alexandra's voice was soft in the darkness. Emma surprises me sometimes. Robert leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars. She processes things differently than other kids her age. More directly. She gets that from Catherine. The ability to cut through the noise to what matters. The mention of his late wife no longer carried the sting it once had. Instead, it felt right that Alexandra could speak of her, could acknowledge Catherine's continued presence in their lives. What happens now? Alexandra's question encompassed far more than their immediate future. Robert considered this. We called David tomorrow, let him know we've talked with Emma. Then Ms. Winters from CPS to schedule Emma's interview. We keep moving forward one step at a time. In us, Alexandra's voice held a vulnerability rarely displayed. What are we, Robert? The question deserved more than a hasty label. Robert reached for her hand in the darkness. We're two people who found each other at exactly the right moment, who are choosing to build something together despite all the reasons it shouldn't work. That makes us the beginning of something extraordinary. The words hung between them, simple but profound. Alexandra's fingers tightened around his acceptance in the pressure. I'm still scared. Her admission came softly. Of failing at this. Of not being what Emma needs. Of disappointing you. The fear is how you know it matters. Robert brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. If it wasn't terrifying, it wouldn't be worth doing. The following week brought Alexandra's first meeting with her legal team. 3 attorneys from Sullivan and Ramirez, specialists in corporate malfeasance and wrongful termination. Robert drove her to their downtown offices, waiting in the reception area, while she presented her evidence and outlined her case. 2 hours later, she emerged from the conference room, her expression a complex mix of vindication and exhaustion. They're taking the case. On contingency. Her voice held wonder at this turn of events. They think it's that strong. The leaked memo plus what James has been able to gather since, there's a pattern of deliberate fraud. They're filing initial paperwork tomorrow. The news should have been purely joyous. Validation after 2 years of being dismissed and disbelieved. But as they drove home, Robert sensed Alexandra's conflicted emotions. What's bothering you about this? This is what you wanted, isn't it? Alexandra stared out the window, watching the city pass by. It is. But it also means revisiting the worst period of my life. The accident, the betrayal, losing everything I'd built. And now you have something to lose again. Robert completed her thought. Us. She turned to him, vulnerability evident in her eyes. What if this drags on for months? Years? What if it becomes all-consuming? What if I turn back into that person I was before, driven, obsessive, work-focused to the exclusion of everything else? The fear was legitimate. Robert had glimpsed that version of Alexandra in moments of intense focus, the CEO who had built a tech empire from nothing. Do you want to be that person again? The question hung between them as Robert navigated through traffic. Parts of her, yes. Alexandra admitted after a long pause. The confidence, the purpose, the feeling that I was building something meaningful, but not the isolation, not the emptiness that I didn't even recognize until it was filled by you and Emma. She brushed a hand across her eyes. I'm afraid of losing this, us, just when I found it, of having to choose between reclaiming my old life and building this new one. Why does it have to be a choice? Robert's question was genuine. Why can't you have both? Justice for what was taken from you and this family we're creating. Alexandra's smile held a touch of sadness. Because life rarely lets you have everything, Robert. There's always a price. The conversation lingered in Robert's mind over the next few days as life settled into a new rhythm. So, Winters from CPS conducted her interview with Emma, who answered questions with characteristic directness. David called to check in, his hostility, notably diminished though not entirely absent. Alexandra's legal case progressed, preliminary motions filed, the machinery of justice beginning its slow grind. Then on a crisp November morning, the letter arrived. Formal Department of Children's Services letterhead addressed to Robert Mitchell. He opened it with trepidation, scanning the bureaucratic language for the verdict. After thorough investigation, the department finds no cause for concern regarding the minor child's placement and welfare care. Relief washed through him so potent he had to sit. The case was closed. David's complaint dismissed. One battle won. He called Alexandra immediately, catching her between work calls. She listened as he read the letter aloud, her joy audible even through the phone. We should celebrate, tonight, after Emma's in bed. The suggestion carried implications that sent heat through Robert's veins. They had been careful maintaining boundaries while Emma adjusted to their evolving relationship. Kisses exchanged in private moments, hands held under the dinner table, but nothing more. Is that a yes? Robert Mitchell, Alexandra's voice held a teasing note he hadn't heard before. Playful, confident. Absolutely yes. Robert found himself grinning like a teenager. I'll pick up wine on my way home. The evening unfolded with delicious anticipation. Dinner with Emma, helping with homework, the bedtime routine of stories and teeth brushing. Then finally, blissfully alone, Robert and Alexandra opened the wine, made a toast to good news and new beginnings. What happened next felt inevitable. The kiss that deepened beyond their previous restraint, the movement from living room to Robert's bedroom, the discovery of each other's bodies with tender exploration. Alexandra's initial nervousness about her paralysis faded under Robert's attentive care, replaced by a connection that transcended physical limitations. Afterwards, lying together in the darkness, Alexandra voiced the thought that had been building for weeks. I love you. The words emerged without pretense or qualification. I didn't expect to, didn't think I could after everything. But here we are. Robert drew her closer, heart full beyond measure. I love you too. Both the person you were before I met you and the person you are now, all of you. The admission felt monumental. A threshold crossed, a commitment made. In the quiet aftermath, Alexandra traced patterns on his chest, thinking aloud. We should look for a house. Something more accessible. Single-level, wider doorways. Something that could be ours, not just yours that I'm living in. The suggestion startled Robert. You want to move? Alexandra propped herself up on one elbow. I want us to start fresh. Somewhere that's ours from the beginning. My legal team thinks we'll reach a settlement within 6 months. Not the full value of what I lost, but enough to make a substantial down payment on a place that works for all of us. The practicality of it, so typically Alexandra, made Robert smile. Already planning our future, are you? She matched his smile, confidence returning. That's what I do, Mitchell. I build things meant to last. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. House hunting with Alexandra revealed practical considerations Robert had never contemplated. Doorway widths, bathroom accessibility, kitchen counter heights. Emma threw herself into the search with characteristic enthusiasm, evaluating each property for its science experiment potential and proximity to parks. December arrived with unexpected news. Alexandra's former company, faced with mounting evidence of fraudulent practices, offered a settlement. The figure, 7 figures, nearly half of what Alexandra had lost, came with non-disclosure provisions, but no admission of wrongdoing. Her legal team advised acceptance. A trial could yield more, they acknowledged, but might drag on for years with no guaranteed outcome. The settlement offered immediate resolution funds to rebuild, a chance to move forward unburdened by the past. Alexandra wrestled with the decision over a weekend, pacing the living room in her wheelchair, making pro-con lists, debating moral principles versus practical realities. Robert listened without imposing his opinion, recognizing her need to reach the conclusion herself. Sunday evening, she emerged from the spare room with calm resolve. I'm taking it. The money isn't the point anymore. The freedom from this fight is what matters now. Robert understood completely. The settlement wasn't just financial compensation. It was liberation from the anger and injustice that had defined her existence for 2 years. Christmas approached, bringing with it a milestone Robert had been both anticipating and dreading. The first holiday season he felt truly happy since Catherine's death. The guilt crept in, unexpectedly ambushing him while hanging lights with Emma, or watching Alexandra wrap gifts with meticulous precision. Alexandra found him on the porch one evening, staring into the darkness, memories heavy in the cold air. Talk to me. She wheeled beside him, a blanket across her lap against the December chill. Robert struggled to articulate the conflict within him. I'm happy, with you with us. And then I remember that Catherine isn't here to see Emma growing up, and the happiness feels wrong somehow. Alexandra was quiet for a moment, then reached for his hand. Catherine loved you both enough to want your happiness even in her absence, especially in her absence. The simple truth of it eased something in Robert's chest. I know you're right. It's just hard sometimes balancing remembering her with moving forward. We don't have to choose. Alexandra's voice was gentle but firm. Catherine will always be part of this family. In Emma, in your memories, in the foundation of who you both are. My presence doesn't diminish that. It builds upon it. The wisdom of her words settled over Robert like a blessing. He leaned down to kiss her, gratitude and love mingling in the gesture. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. Emma woke them at an ungodly hour, bouncing on Robert's bed with excitement. Presents were opened with appropriate appreciation. Books and science kits for Emma, practical gifts exchanged between Robert and Alexandra. Then, as the wrapping paper chaos reached its peak, Alexandra produced one final small package. This is for both of you. Her voice held an uncharacteristic nervousness. Robert and Emma exchanged curious glances before Emma tore into the wrapping. Inside lay a model house, a perfect miniature of a single-story craftsman home with a wide porch and ramp access. Emma examined it with puzzled interest. It's pretty. Is it for my dolls? Not exactly. Alexandra took a deep breath. It's the house I've put an offer on. For us, if you both like it. Robert's surprise must have shown on his face. Alexandra continued quickly. It's about 15 minutes from here. 4 bedrooms, fully accessible, big backyard. The settlement money came through yesterday. I didn't want to say anything until I knew it was a real possibility. Emma's eyes widened with understanding. We'd move all of us together. That's the idea. Alexandra's gaze moved between them, gauging reactions. But only if you both want to. It would be our home, the 3 of us. A fresh start. Robert found himself momentarily speechless. The gesture represented more than real estate. It was Alexandra committing her future to theirs, putting down literal foundations. Emma broke the silence, practical as always. Does my new school have a good science program? The question startled a laugh from both adults. Yes, Alexandra confirmed. I checked. They even have a robotics club. Emma's face lit up. Then I think it's a good idea, as long as I get to paint my room purple. The simplicity of her acceptance, so freely given, so uncomplicated by adult hesitations, struck Robert profoundly. He looked at Alexandra, at the hope and vulnerability in her eyes, and found his voice. I think it's perfect. All of it. You, this house, our future together. The relief on Alexandra's face was palpable. She had taken a risk, made a grand gesture without certainty of its reception. In that moment, Robert glimpsed again the bold CEO who had built a tech empire, the visionary who saw possibilities others missed and had the courage to pursue them. New Year's Eve brought another milestone. David arrived for dinner, his first social visit since the CPS investigation concluded. The tension of previous encounters had faded, replaced by a cautious cordiality. He brought wine and a peace offering for Alexandra, a book on accessible home design he had found while researching for a client. The gesture, small but significant, signaled a shift. Alexandra accepted it with grace, recognizing the effort it represented. After dinner, while Emma showed David her latest science project in the living room, Robert and Alexandra cleared dishes in companionable silence. "He's trying," Alexandra observed quietly. "That's something." Robert nodded, watching his brother laugh at something Emma said. "It's more than I expected, honestly." David doesn't admit being wrong easily. Must be a Mitchell family trait. Alexandra's teasing lightened the moment. Their peaceful routine was interrupted by Robert's phone ringing. Martha Fletcher from next door, her voice tight with anxiety. "Robert, I hate to bother you on New Year's, but the power's out on our whole block. My backup generator isn't working, and my oxygen machine." Her breathing sounded labored even through the phone. "I called the power company, but with the ice storm, they're saying it could be hours." The severity of the situation registered immediately. Martha's COPD required supplemental oxygen, particularly in times of stress. Without power to her machine, she risked serious medical distress. "We'll be right there." Robert ended the call, explaining the situation to Alexandra and David. "I need to go check on her, see if I can get the generator running." "I'm coming too." Alexandra was already reaching for her coat. "I might be able to help." David joined them, concern overriding the evening's social pretenses. "I'll stay with Emma. You two go." The short distance to Martha's house proved treacherous, ice glazing the sidewalks. Robert helped navigate Alexandra's wheelchair through the slippery conditions, both of them illuminated only by flashlight beams, in the sudden darkness of a neighborhood without power. Martha answered her door in obvious distress, her breathing shallow and labored anxiety compounding her physical symptoms. Robert headed immediately to the garage to examine her generator, while Alexandra stayed with the elderly woman, her calm presence a counterpoint to Martha's growing panic. The generator's problem proved beyond Robert's mechanical abilities, an electrical failure in the starter system. He returned to the living room with the bad news, finding Martha on the couch with Alexandra beside her, speaking in low, reassuring tones. "The generator's fried. I can't fix it here." Robert's frustration was evident. "We need to get her to a hospital." "No hospitals." Martha's objection came between labored breaths. "Just need my machine." "The portable battery's dead too." Alexandra's expression shifted, the problem solver emerging. "What voltage does the machine run on? Is it plug-in or battery-powered standard outlet?" 120 volts. Martha gestured to the oxygen concentrator, sitting dark and useless beside her recliner. Alexandra thought for a moment, then turned to Robert. "Go back to our house. In my workroom, there's a black case under the desk. Portable power bank I've been modifying. Bring it along with the voltage adapter in the red toolbox." Robert didn't question her, simply nodded and headed back into the icy night. He returned 10 minutes later with the requested items, finding Alexandra examining Martha's oxygen machine with focused attention. "Perfect." She took the power bank from him, connecting wires with practiced efficiency. "If I've calculated correctly, this should run the concentrator for about 4 hours. Not ideal, but enough to get us through until power's restored, or we can arrange something more permanent." Robert watched as she completed the connections, flipped a switch, and the oxygen machine hummed to life. Martha's relief was immediate and profound, the supplemental oxygen easing her distress within minutes. "How did you know how to do that?" Martha asked as her breathing normalized. "I used to build emergency power systems for data centers." Alexandra's explanation was matter of fact. Same principles apply, just different scale. The next 2 hours unfolded in Martha's darkened living room, lit only by candles and flashlights. Robert called the power company for updates while Alexandra monitored the makeshift power solution, making minor adjustments to maximize efficiency. Martha, breathing easier now, watched Alexandra with newfound respect. "Catherine would like you." The elderly woman's statement came unexpectedly in a lull of conversation. She didn't suffer fools or shrinking violets. Always said a woman needed backbone and brains in equal measure. "You've got both." The comparison, the highest praise Martha could offer, visibly touched Alexandra. I wish I could have known her better. From everything I've heard, she was remarkable. She was. Martha's gaze drifted to the family photos on her mantle, decades of neighborhood history captured in frames. Not perfect. Lord knows none of us are, but true to herself and fierce about protecting her own. Like you. The power returned shortly before midnight, the street lights flickering on to illuminate the ice-glazed world outside. With Martha's oxygen machine functioning properly again, Robert and Alexandra prepared to leave. At the door, Martha caught Alexandra's hand. I was wrong about you when you first came. I thought Robert was making a mistake letting a stranger into their lives. Alexandra squeezed the older woman's hand gently. You were protecting them. I understand that. Martha nodded, acknowledging the truth of it. Well, I'm glad I was wrong. You're good for them. Both of them. Robert's smiling again, and that girl of theirs walks taller since you came. The validation from the person who had known them longest, who had watched Emma grow from infancy, carried weight beyond measure. Alexandra found herself blinking back unexpected tears. Thank you for trusting me with them. They're everything. The simple truth of the statement hung in the air between them, a covenant more binding than any formal vow. Later, walking back to their house through the silent, ice-coated neighborhood, Robert found himself marveling at the evening's transformation. What began as a celebration had become a crisis, then somehow evolved into a blessing. Martha's acceptance of Alexandra, the final piece clicking into place in their reconstructed family. You saved the day back there. Robert's admiration was evident. I wouldn't have known what to do with that power bank. Alexandra shrugged, deflecting the praise. Just applied what I know. Nothing special. Robert stopped, turning to face her in the glow of newly restored streetlights. That's where you're wrong. What you did tonight was extraordinary. Not just the technical solution, but how you handled Martha calmed her fear. You weren't just fixing a machine, you were caring for a person. Alexandra's expression softened. She matters to you and Emma, so she matters to me. That's what family does. The simplicity of her definition, family as a circle of care extending beyond blood ties, struck Robert as profoundly right. They reached their house to find David and Emma on the porch watching the neighborhood's power restoration with relieved expressions. Emma ran to meet them, eager for details of their emergency mission. Inside, as the new year approached, the four of them gathered in the living room. David, whose planned departure had been delayed by the power outage, found himself included in their makeshift celebration. Emma, overtired but determined to see midnight, curled against Alexandra on the couch. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Robert raised his glass. To new beginnings and to the family we choose. The toast resonated in the warmth of the room, acknowledged with raised glasses and nodded agreement. Even David, whose initial hostility had mellowed to cautious acceptance, joined without reservation. When midnight arrived, Emma insisted on banging pots and pans on the porch, a tradition Catherine had started years ago. Robert watched his daughter and Alexandra laughing together in the frosty night air, their breath clouding in the cold, and felt a completeness he hadn't experienced since Catherine's death. David joined him at the window, following his gaze. She's good for you both. I see that now. The admission couldn't have been easy for his proud brother. Robert appreciated it all the more for that. Thanks for seeing it, for saying it. It matters. David nodded, acknowledging the olive branch. I was worried about losing Catherine's place in your lives, that Emma would forget her mother. She never will. Robert's certainty was absolute. Alexandra makes sure of that. She talks about Catherine with Emma, keeps her memory alive. Not out of obligation, but because she understands that Catherine is the foundation everything else is built on. The brothers stood in companionable silence, watching their expanded family welcome the new year. The moment felt healing, not just for Robert and Alexandra, but for all of them, a closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Spring brought moving day. Boxes packed furniture, loaded Emma directing operations with clipboard efficiency. The new house waited across town, its renovations complete, its rooms ready for the life they would build within its walls. Martha Fletcher arrived to say goodbye, bearing homemade cookies and practical advice about the new neighborhood. David stopped by to help with the heavy lifting, his initial reservations about their relationship now evolved into genuine support. As the last boxes were loaded into the moving truck, Robert found himself alone in the house that had sheltered his family through grief and recovery, joy and pain. The empty rooms echoed with memories. Catherine bringing newborn Emma home, Emma's first steps across the living room floor, the long dark days after Catherine's death, and then Alexandra bringing light back when he'd thought it gone forever. A sound behind him, the soft whir of Alexandra's wheelchair on the hardwood floors. Saying goodbye, her voice was gentle, understanding the complex emotions of the moment. Robert nodded, unable to fully articulate the bittersweetness. So many memories here, good and bad. Alexandra moved beside him, taking his hand. We take the important ones with us. Not just the happy ones, but the hard ones too. They're all part of your story, our story now. The wisdom of her perspective, honoring the past while embracing the future, settled something restless in Robert's soul. He squeezed her hand, gratitude beyond words flowing through the connection. Emma appeared in the doorway, impatient with adult sentimentality. Come on, the truck's waiting and I want to see my new room. Her enthusiasm, so untouched by the melancholy of leaving, reminded Robert that for Emma, this move represented adventure rather than loss, the resilience of childhood always reaching forward rather than clinging to what was. We're coming, scientist. Alexandra's nickname for Emma had stuck, becoming a term of endearment between them. Go make sure Mr. Carrots is safely buckled in. As Emma raced back to the car, Robert turned to Alexandra, ready to start our next chapter. Alexandra's smile held all the certainty he needed. With you two always. They closed the door on the empty house, not looking back as they joined Emma in the car. The future waited, not without challenges. Alexandra's ongoing medical needs, the adjustments of blending their lives, Emma's growth and development, but faced together as a family built by choice rather than chance. 2 years later, on a perfect June afternoon, they gathered in the backyard of their new home. White chairs arranged in neat rows, an arch of flowers marking the spot where vows would be exchanged. Emma, now 9, took her role as flower girl with solemn importance, practicing her walk down the makeshift aisle with meticulous attention to detail. Martha Fletcher supervised the food preparation, directing the catering staff with military precision. David surprisingly invested in the wedding details, adjusted flower arrangements, and checked sound equipment with newfound event planning skills. In the master bedroom, Alexandra sat before the mirror while a stylist arranged her hair. The reflection showed a woman transformed from the desperate figure Robert had found at that bus stop, not just physically with the healthy glow that had returned to her skin, but in the confidence that radiated from her posture, the peace that had replaced desperate survival. The settlement money had been put to good use. Beyond the accessible house they now called home, Alexandra had launched a new venture, Cooper Adaptive Technologies, specializing in software and systems for people with disabilities. Starting small, working from their home office, the company had quickly gained traction, attracting clients and investors impressed by Alexandra's innovative approaches. A knock at the bedroom door. Emma, already dressed in her flower girl outfit, a crown of daisies circling her dark curls. Dad's nervous, like really nervous. He keeps checking his tie even though Uncle David fixed it like 100 times. The observation made Alexandra smile. Tell him he looks handsome and I'll be ready soon. Emma lingered, uncharacteristically hesitant. I have something for you, from Mom. The statement caught Alexandra off guard. From Catherine, Emma nodded solemnly, producing a small velvet box from her dress pocket. Dad didn't know I had this. Grandma Mitchell gave it to me before she died last year. She said Mom wanted me to have it when I was older, but I think Mom would want you to wear it today. Alexandra accepted the box with reverent hands, opening it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet, small sapphires catching the light. Mom wore it when she married Dad. Emma's voice was soft with the importance of the moment. Grandma said it was her something blue. The significance of the gesture, Emma offering this connection to Catherine, this blessing from beyond, overwhelmed Alexandra. Tears threatened carefully applied makeup, suddenly at risk. Emma, are you sure this is your mother's heirloom? Emma nodded with absolute certainty. You're not replacing her. You're just continuing. That's what you told me, remember? Not a replacement, but an addition. The echo of Alexandra's own words from 2 years ago struck deep evidence that Emma had internalized the complex truth of their blended family. I'd be honored to wear it. Alexandra's voice caught as Emma helped fasten the bracelet around her wrist, the cool silver a tangible link to the woman whose absence had shaped them all. Thank you, Emma. This means more than you can know. Outside guests had assembled, colleagues from Robert's auto shop, Alexandra's business associates, neighbors, and friends gathered to witness the formalization of a union already forged through crisis and daily love. Robert waited beneath the flower arch, David beside him as best man. When Alexandra appeared at the back of the aisle, not in the wheelchair she usually used for longer distances, but walking with the aid of forearm crutches, the result of 2 years of determined physical therapy, the collective intake of breath was audible. Her progress toward Robert was slow, but purposeful, each step of victory over limitations once thought permanent. Emma walked beside her, not as traditional escort, but as physical support, the symbolism lost on no one. When she reached Robert, his eyes shone with pride and love beyond measure. "You didn't tell me you were planning this." Alexandra's smile held a touch of her old CEO confidence. "Some surprises are worth keeping." The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt, vows exchanged with the depth of understanding that comes only from having already weathered storms together. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the applause from their assembled community felt like more than social convention. It was recognition of a journey completed against significant odds. At the reception, as twilight softened the backyard's edges, David surprised everyone by requesting the microphone for an impromptu toast. When Robert first brought Alexandra home, I was convinced it was a mistake. He raised his glass, acknowledging his past opposition without shame. I couldn't see how this unconventional beginning could lead to anything but heartache for a family already touched by loss. His gaze moved between the newlyweds, genuine emotion evident. "I've never been happier to be proven wrong. What I've witnessed over these past 2 years isn't just a love story between two adults. It's the creation of a family that honors what came before while building something new. It's Emma gaining not a replacement mother, but an additional source of love and guidance." David turned to include the entire gathering in his toast. "Alexandra and Robert have taught me something profound, that families aren't defined by how they begin, but by how they choose each other every single day. To the bride and groom, and to the power of second chances." The sentiment resonated through the gathering, glasses raised in celebration of a truth universally recognized, that love in its purest form is always a choice renewed with each dawn. Later, as the party continued around them, Robert and Alexandra found a quiet moment on the porch of the home they'd built together. Emma danced with David in the yard, her laughter carrying through the summer evening. Happy Robert's question encompassed far more than the day's celebration. Alexandra leaned against him, her gaze taking in the life they'd created from the most unlikely of beginnings. More than happy, whole. The simple truth of it settled between them, profound in its completeness. From that cold October night at an empty bus stop to this warm June evening, surrounded by love and possibility, a journey neither could have imagined, yet one that felt in retrospect somehow inevitable. Sometimes the most broken roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. Alexandra's observation came softly, watching Emma twirl beneath garden lights. And the most extraordinary families are built from pieces that didn't originally belong together. Robert's arm tightened around her shoulders, the wedding band on his finger catching the last light of day. "Then I'm glad we found each other's broken pieces. They fit together pretty well, I'd say." Alexandra turned to kiss him, the future stretching before them. Not perfect, not without challenges, but faced together as a family, created through the most powerful force in any universe. The choice to love deliberately and completely every single day.